Tawnos was not born into greatness, nor did he seek it. He was a craftsman, an artificer whose skill with his hands and mind far outpaced those of his peers. Raised in the quiet town of Jorilin in Yotia, he spent his formative years under the tutelage of his uncle, a master toymaker. It was in these early years that his fascination with mechanics and artifice took root. While others saw mere playthings in his delicate contraptions, Tawnos saw something greater, a means to harness the intricacies of nature, to mirror its elegance in moving parts and clockwork creatures. It was this ambition that led him to Krug, the beating heart of Yotia's power, where he sought apprenticeship under Urza, the chief artificer. Many had tried before him, but Urza was a man consumed by his work, disinterested in young minds seeking knowledge. Tawnos, however, was different. He arrived not with words of flattery or empty promises of devotion, but with a small mechanical snake, a toy of his own design. It slithered across the table with such uncanny realism that even Urza could not dismiss the ingenuity behind it. It was in that moment that Tawnos earned his place, becoming more than just another apprentice. He became Urza's most trusted student, a mind of innovation in the shadow of a genius. For years, Tawnos labored under Urza's watchful eye, designing artifacts that would one day be used in war. He was not naive to the rising tensions between Urza and his brother Mishra. The brothers had once stood as equals, but now they were bitter rivals, their conflict a wildfire spreading across Terisiare. Despite the looming war, Tawnos continued his work, refining his designs, ensuring that his creations were not just weapons of destruction but marvels of artifice. It was in this turbulent time that he encountered Ashnod, the brilliant and ruthless artificer who served Mishra. Their meetings were brief, often on opposite sides of battlefields or in stolen moments of uneasy truce. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, sharp-tongued, fiercely independent, and yet somehow he found himself drawn to her. She called him Duck, an amused observation of his loyalty to Urza, likening him to a hatchling that follows its mother without question. And perhaps at the time she was right. He had believed in Urza's vision, in the righteousness of their cause. But war had a way of changing even the most steadfast of men. As the conflict escalated, Tawnos found himself at Argoth, the final battleground where the fate of Dominaria would be decided. There, amidst the chaos, he crossed paths with Ashnod once more. But this was not a meeting of adversaries. It was an act of desperation. She carried with her the Golgothian Sylex, an ancient and terrible artifact, one whose power could end the war in a single stroke. With no time for words, she thrust it into his hands, bidding him to take it to Urza. And as he turned to run, she stood her ground against Gix, the monstrous demon who sought to claim the battlefield as his own. Tawnos did not witness what became of her. All he knew was that he reached Urza in time. The Sylex was activated, and in its cataclysmic wake the war ended. But its cost was beyond reckoning. The land was shattered, its skies turned to fire, and its people left to pick through the ruins of their once great empires. Urza was changed, ascended to something beyond mortal comprehension, and Tawnos was left behind. He survived only by the virtue of his own creation. Before the final battle, he had designed a stasis coffin intended to imprison Mishra without killing him. Instead, it became his own salvation, sealing him away from the devastation of the Sylex Blast. For 5 long years, he remained entombed, untouched by time, until Urza, now a being of near-divine power, released him. The world he awoke to was not the one he had left. Krug was gone, Yotia shattered, and the war that had defined his existence was now little more than history. He returned to Queen Kayla bin Krug, the woman he had once served, and recounted to her the final moments of the brothers' war, but his heart was no longer in the service of kings and queens, nor in the machinations of war. He had seen too much, lost too much. And so, when the siege of Penregan came, when war once more threatened to consume what little remained, he made his decision. Tawnos burned his notes, the culmination of years of study, of invention. He would not let his knowledge be twisted into instruments of destruction once more. Then, without a word, he disappeared from the city, vanishing into obscurity. For years there was no word of him. Some believed he had died, others that he had simply walked away from the world of men. But in truth, he had found Ashnod. Together they founded a school of magic and artifice near Ronham Lake, a sanctuary for those who wished to learn without the shadow of war looming over them. There he became not just an artificer, but a teacher, a mentor to those who sought to create for the sake of creation, not destruction. In his final years, as death crept upon him, he penned his last thoughts onto 4 scraps of parchment, fragments of history detailing the might stone and weak stone that had driven 2 brothers to war, that had shaped the fate of the world. These writings, insignificant in their time, would survive him by millennia, bound by mistake within the pages of an ancient codex, waiting to be discovered by those who still sought the truth of what had come before. And thus, Tawnos faded into legend, not as a warrior nor as a hero, but as a man who had once sought to build, to create, and in the end to atone.